Thanks for joining me, everybody. Bungo Bob here. This little video is just in relation to the 1 or 2 matches we've had down at Acorn Fishery, where we've used a little feeder where it's been a little bit windier, a little bit wider, and we've had to break the pole down 2 or 3 times. And how the fish have been feeding down there recently, they're straight up off the bottom. Should you put anything sort of down through the water column, like I generally fish it with a pole, can put in a few pellets like you do, tap them in, lower your rig in, and that's not been working, so I've had to chuck a feeder. And as match anglers, I don't think you can ever poo-poo a method. I mean, I'm very much pole orientated. I love pole fishing, and I'm not a massive fan of feeder fishing. It's not my go-to sort of tools, if you like. I think a lot of match anglers who are just sort of stay on their local circuits and that, which is all I do nowadays. I think we all have our favourite methods and the ones we're most confident in, but I'd never turn me back on a method, and I don't think as match anglers you can afford to. You know, if it's the right method because of wind, because of how the fish are feeding and what have you, and you want to try and be competitive, you have to do it. So this little short video is just about how I set up the feeder. I'm going to physically show you how we do that in a minute, but I just wanted to explain that it is for those short sort of chucks, 16 meters or so, on those sort of little snake lakes. This isn't for sort of a 70 yard or even a 40 yard chuck really. This is for just those little plops. The feeder I use is a hybrid feeder. You've probably seen this on the videos, and the reason I do that again is a word I often use is simplicity, and I like to try and bring that in my fishing everywhere I can. Now for somebody like myself who isn't fishing the feeder all the time, I think you need to keep it simple. And with a hybrid, I don't have to get my micro pellets perfect. I don't have to use a mould. I can miscast, you know, reel it in quickly, reload that feeder fast, because there's no mould, don't have to have perfect pellets, etc. And you can dampen down 4s as well and put in there if you ever need to. I do like micros when I can though. I fish a little 4 in the band most of the time, to be honest. So that's what this little short video is about. So let's get on with the setup. Hi everyone, so here we are. So my preferred feeder for that sort of short chuck on snake lakes, etc., is a small Guru, a 24 gram. Anything more than 20 meters, to be honest, I would be looking at 30 grams, but I do like a 20 gram just to plop it in off the boards. These feeders aren't the strongest of feeders out. These walls are quite thin, and I find if I whack it in off the boards enough times, I can crack and break these. But at the same time, I do like them because exactly that. They're not too thick or walled. They're quite thin. The feeder itself is quite wide and it's quite shallow. I like that. And it lies down quite flat. So I do enjoy the Guru ones. And you also notice I got a short stem for those little chucks. Oops, there we go. For those little chucks, you want a short stem. You don't really want a longer stem. If it was on a longer chuck, I may consider a longer stem, and I'll never fix a feeder unless I'm elasticating it. This one itself is black hydride and put on there, but I would use that on occasions when it's a sort of longer chuck. But on shorter chucks, I don't want it fixed at all. I want it free running, because I simply think you get broken too many times on the take on those short chucks. So first thing we do is we've got a little bead here that sits on top, a little cap I should say, that sits on top of our stem. So I've got some 8-pound technium here just for the case of this demonstration. On those snake lakes and that, I'll be honest, I generally try and use a clear line and only 6 pound. You don't need anything heavier for those sort of chucks. And then what we use now, we've got it through there, look, we've got it, put our cap on, hold the stem in as I do that, right, so there we go, there's our line through there. And what we got here is we've got a Preston do these, so it's a little swivel, but what you've got on the end there, this is quite key, this is one of these little, I don't know what you call them, is it an O-ring? And that O-ring gives that hook bait so much freedom. Can you see the way I'm flicking it about? Look at it. It's got so much freedom on there to waft around and move around. It's quite critical that. If you just thread it back put the loop through, thread your hook through a loop just on the swivel itself. It's quite fixed, but like this, it's got so much freedom. It's quite massive, that is. And then on this end, that's generally more circular, this here. But what I do is I tend to just get a little pair of, it's more circular than that. I've already crimped this. I know it's going to fit already, but I'll just show you. And I just crimp it in a little bit. And the reason is so as I can fit that in the end of the feeder. And the barrel itself as well will go in there in a minute once I get that line out the way. So the next thing to do is just go through our swivel, and then rather than just tie it, you can tie it there, you can tie a blood knot or whatever you want, but what I like to do is go back up through the feeder, and I was lucky there that it came out of the cap. If it didn't, I could have pulled the cap off, couldn't I? Pulled the cap off, made it a bit easier for myself, and you can see now how that's pulled up in there. See how nice and tidy that is. And that O-ring there still, see how easily it moves around. Let me show you if I can. I can't understate that, how important that is. So there we are, it's through like so. Now what I'm going to do is just pass that feeder past there. That's about the length of the feeder. I mean, I could mark it with a pen really, but where this is darker line, I'm not going to bother. But what I generally do is mark it on my clearer line and then try and tie the knot like an inch above the feeder, and I'll show you why that is in a minute. So just make a loop, half a twist, okay, through once, through twice, and as we all know, never ever make a dry knot. So a good tug there, okay, nice and tight. And we pull that back, pull the knot back up through. We can trim that off. I mean, that wasn't a bad guess. Look, the knot isn't too far off an inch above. It's a little bit more, but I would generally like it half inch to an inch, probably half an inch. Sort of where my fingers are, there is where I want the knot. And on a clearer line, I'll mark that with a black marker, pull the feeder up out the way, and then tie it there. So the purpose of that as well is, I mean, once the fish takes this, because that's in there nice and tidy, there's every chance at an angle, if it takes it, it'll bolt off. If it happens to take it straight, it hits that knot and just catches enough. Can you see it? It just catches enough to make that fish bolt, but not enough to make it a fixed rig. A fixed rig at short distances, they will break you off. And that's my simple little feeder setup. I don't have to have perfect pellets, I don't need a mode. It's just nice and simple, isn't it? If you don't fish a feeder all the time, and you just, you know, you can just have that in your armoury.